Welcome to the Salk Institute's Where Cures Begin podcast, where scientists talk about breakthrough discoveries with your hosts Ali Akmal and Brittany Fair.
Tatyana Sharpee is a professor in Salk's Computational Neurobiology laboratory. She uses methods from mathematics, statistics, and physics to chart the principles by which the brain's billions of neurons exchange information and energy. Her work can get pretty theoretical, but what makes it so intriguing is that it's all about the very concrete way we sense our environment through sight, sound, and smell. Dr. Tatyana Sharpee, welcome to Where Cures Begin.
Thank you for having me here.
I think one of the earliest conversations we had, I was asking you about that big internet debate about whether the dress was blue or gold, or maybe it was blue and yellow. I can't remember the two colors that people saw. And they saw it so differently and they felt so strongly about it. Can you talk about that and what was behind those differences in perception?
Yeah, so the issue is that it's amazing that the differences between perception were almost black and white. Mm-hmm. So what was black or blue for one person was yellow or white for another person. So how can we, looking at the same image, perceive a very different aspect of it? Mm-hmm. And it turns out that our perception is influenced by our belief about the structure of the light, for example, around us. And we can be completely certain that that's the answer. Two people can read the same article and form completely different opinion or interpret that evidence in completely different ways based on what they believe is true or not.
And in the case of the dress, when you talk about beliefs, these are not conscious beliefs people have, but they're computations their brain is making in how the object is lit or where the light is coming from, that kind of thing?
That's right. So that's basically based on our experience with the world. So in the case of the dress, the explanation was if the person spends more time inside or more time outdoors, they have different lighting conditions, and that influences their perception.
So the photograph is taken outside, their brain is going to make certain assumptions about what the lighting will do and therefore what the color of the dress will be.
That's right.
Okay, well, that's utterly fascinating. How would you describe the field you're in or what your profession is? Are you a biologist? Are you a physicist? How do you describe yourself?
You know, they say that if you ask a physicist, then they will tell you that everything is physics. If you ask a computer scientist, they will say everything is computer science. Uh-huh. And if you ask a chemist, they will say, well, everything is really chemistry. And all of these views are correct. You know, my training was in physics, so I could say I'm a physicist who studies biological systems. Mm-hmm. And that probably would be the best answer.
Your work, if I'm understanding this correctly, seeks to quantify the activity of brain cells called neurons to better understand how our senses function. In other words, how we see and hear things and how we smell odors.
Yes, how the brain works and what are the algorithms that it uses. There are many people across the globe who are working towards understanding that code, and I think that's exciting.
Well, some of the applications of your work are in vision, for example, for self-driving cars, improving that sort of
artificial vision, but also for brain-machine interfaces. Mm-hmm. That's another hot area of research. So if we understand more about the neural code, then we can make better devices. So we had a paper, actually, it was almost two and a half years ago. Vision is one of the mysteries of sensory processing, even though we know more about vision than perhaps about other senses. But it's the case that the more we know, the more we realize that we don't know. And we were trying to figure out how different parts of the visual scene come together to yield our coherent perception. Of course, it wasn't a full solution to the problem, but we made progress in elucidating how different types of edges are perceived edges that are defined by differences in texture, such as between, for example, you can have a furry animal sitting on a tree branch and they can be similarly colored, but still the texture will be different and our eyes would be able to detect that edge. They're called second-order edges, and they're more difficult to detect. And we saw that the secondary visual areas have neurons that specialize in that.
In understanding the differences in texture.
Or detecting edges that are defined by changes in texture.
Changes in texture. Okay. So do you take data from actual neurons and then use statistical methods and algorithms to sort of organize them, and from that to take rules of how they may be operating?
Both. So we work on idealized codes, and it's a pure theory, and then see how they can be implemented in the brain. And we look at the data and see what are the properties of the models that might best describe neural responses, and then try to match the two lines of research.
Sort of see where they fit together.
Yes, I mean, it's like in a textbook, they give you a problem and then at the end there is a solution. So you're trying to solve it without looking at the solution, but then on occasion for difficult problems, you might want to look at the solution. At least, what is the number? Are you getting the correct number? So that's how I view it. We do ideal theoretical solutions, and then we look in the brain to see what is happening and compare our solutions to the sort of answers that are provided by nature. So the reason we use tools from statistical physics or information theory or statistics in general is that we're searching for ideal code that can be used to transform information without loss, and that can provide us with a guide to understanding the brain if we understand the ideal solution that neural circuits might be implementing.
In addition to studying vision, Sharpee also studies the sense of smell, known as olfaction.
So one can actually view olfaction as a communication system between plants and animals, or between animals and each other. But it's interesting how we can use the statistics of signals in the natural world to learn clues about organization of the nervous system.
And one of the reasons you took on this study was because, if I recall correctly, you said that you can't really tell very much from an odor molecule structure what it's going to smell like. So you have to look at it in other ways. Is that correct?
Yes. And so we think that methods such as those that we used, or similarly, they're called embeddings or mappings of molecules, assign them coordinates, then the coordinates can be a predictor of how things might smell than the chemical structure itself.
So what the lab did was to use statistics to map combinations of odors that are found together in nature. And the locations of coordinates on the map could tell them things about those odors, whether, for example, people would find particular odors pleasant or unpleasant.
So, for example, if we smell food and we need to know whether it's spoiled or not, and we need to know whether there are dangerous bacteria that are present in there. So we by experience, we learn that certain bacteria produce certain kind of molecules, and if we detect those molecules, then maybe we shouldn't eat this food. So that's sort of the intuition behind the Cooccurrence measure. So a bacteria can produce any number of signatures, but if I detect one or two of them, that's a sufficient warning for me not to eat what I have found unpleasant to be in the past. So some products have only a few molecules that identify them, and others can have up to 30 molecules that contribute to our perception. So it turns out one of the most complicated mixtures cognacs. So they have about 30 different molecules that influence our perception.
Let's see, you have done, since I've worked with you, vision and odor, and are you working on hearing as well?
Yes, we do work on hearing. Yes, we have an ongoing collaboration with groups in France and Israel on study hearing. So that's an ongoing project.
I'm switching gears. Did you grow up in this country?
No, I grew up in Ukraine. I came here for graduate school.
So you grew up in a family of scientists.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I guess I was fortunate to see examples of successful scientists in front of my eyes, how they worked. My grandfather was a mathematician, and he, even though he was, in his 70s, he would always say, I have to go learn how to become a better mathematician. So he would wake up at 5 a.m. and work before everybody was awake. He would work, and I would try to wake up as early as possible, but maybe at 6, but not as early as he would wake up, and we would work together at a table on our problems. He would work on his problems, I would work on my problems.
And was this when you were in grade school or older?
Yeah, or even younger.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness.
So he would give me these large multiplication problems of 10-digit numbers. And everybody in the family would be, oh no, how can you ask a child to multiply such big numbers? And he said, it's okay, she can look. There is a multiplication table right next to her, and if you know the algorithm, you can multiply any number. I like that. I admired him very much. And then, you would take a break, chop some vegetables for soup, and then continue doing your mathematics, and so on. So
you had this mathematician grandfather, but you also had some physicists in the family?
Yeah, most of my parents are physicists, and my father is an experimentalist, and he's the reason why I'm a theorist.
Oh.
I looked at, his experiment was very complicated. He dealt with metals, and they had to be heated to high temperatures. So, here is a furnace over here and the cooling water over there, and it's all running, and he's constantly fixing his rig. And I said, well, no way I can do that. Who's going to fix the rig for me? So I better become a theorist.
And was he disappointed?
I don't know, but we do have this experimentalist theorist debate.
A friendly rivalry, perhaps?
I'm not so sure. He's kind of dismissive of these theorists. All they need, they're just making up a number. Experimentalist has to really think how to ask nature the question. And the theorist can just come up with some kind of a theory. Who knows if it's right or wrong? And, I try to hold my own by saying that it's the theory that determines what is experimentally observable. This is one of the quotes by Einstein, because without a theory, you wouldn't know what experiment to do. When he predicted that the light will bend by this amount, if you don't have a theory that the light bends, you will never do the experiment. It's a never-ending saga.
Do you have any advice you would give to girls specifically who are interested in a career in science?
Well, I think there is this notion that women are not good at mathematics, or they're afraid of theoretical physics. So I think it's certainly doable for a woman to be specialized in physics and mathematics. Wouldn't exclude the possibility that the ways we think about the problem are different between men and women. One person can be faster, but the other person can see different connections. So this is what is emphasized in, for example, in this book on A Beautiful Mind. So this was a person with schizophrenia or some mental disorder, and he could see connections between unrelated observations that other people would miss. So I think the message from that book and from maybe other experience that we have different viewpoints and can be useful. I think the art is to find a combination or an area where one's particular strengths and approaches are useful. But one shouldn't exclude mathematics and theory. There are unique challenges for women in mathematical and physical and in general in sciences, but that doesn't mean that women shouldn't pursue them.
Well, Dr. Sharpee, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Join us next time for more cutting-edge Salk science. At Salk, world-renowned scientists work together to explore big, bold ideas, from cancer to Alzheimer's, aging to climate change. Where Cures Begin is a production of the Salk Institute's Office of Communications. To learn more about the research discussed today, visit salk.edu/podcast.